my name's Jem Finer and I'm here in the new Bridge Gallery in Newcastle as part of the AV Festival on slowness, and this is the kind of business end of my piece here, which is called Slowplayer. Slowplayer is, as you can probably see, it's a record deck, a turntable, but it turns at very slow speeds. Its maximum speed is 3 1/3 RPM. Its minimum is, well, as close as you can get to 0 RPM, but let's say to actually hear anything about 5 minutes per revolution, 0.2 RPM. It's being amplified through a pair of dub sound system speaker stacks. And they're kind of important part of it, obviously, to amplify the sound, but also aesthetic. Like you hear, they've got a sort of monolithic appearance to them. They're a bit like, you know, totemic Easter Island kind of presence. And so, you know, they functionally they're important because obviously when you start reducing sound to very low, you know, speeds, records to low speeds, the frequencies are lowered accordingly. So they're very good for reproducing like the bass. But also there's something in the way that sound becomes abstracted at low speeds that to me is very geological and meteorological actually, and monolithic. And so the speaker stacks you know, had a visual component to that. They reinforce that. You know, a lot of my work sort of comes from thinking about time on slower, longer scales than the way, you know, day-to-day time appears to work, which seems to me to be getting increasingly frenetic and an increasing sort of lack of attention to detail too. So there's a kind of contrariness in this, in saying, okay, let's take a record and slow it right down so it takes 6-9 hours to play. But there's a seriousness in it too. And one of the lovely things to me about records is that they're made by someone and they're made to play at a very specific speed. But because of the nature of the technology and the medium, you know, encoded in them is sort of an almost infinite variety of other readings of that material, because, you know, just because it says on it 33 1/3 or 45, you know, you can play it at any speed you like. And you know, I remember as a child, we had this record player and it had 4 speeds actually. It had 33 and 45, it also had 78. But most interesting to me as a kid was 16. And I used to love sort of whacking it down to 16 and hearing, you know, what happened to the sound of things. You know, there is a point as you sort of go down, descend through the depths of the speeds, you know, there's a for a long time, you know, everything's still figurative, as it were. There's still a relationship to recognizable things, and go, oh yeah, that's a guitar, very slow, or a voice. But there comes a weird point where the figurative disappears. It's like, it seems to me it's a bit like going down into some ocean trench. Suddenly you're in the real dark and everything's totally different and abstracted. And then the slower you go, the weirder the monsters that come out of, you know, of the speakers. So in that sense it becomes quite important to try and carefully choose what records to play. Obviously, you know, it's funny because I suppose I thought one of the first things I thought, it would be great to play a dub record. But of course that's pointless because it's so bassy to start with that the bass is gone, you can't hear it, it's too low. So all you hear is just the sort of crash of a hi-hat, something occasionally. What things that, you know, very interesting are is birdsong actually. That's probably one of the most effective kinds of material because it's very short. Each sound's very short, so it's drawn out, and there's gaps between them, so you've got gaps, but also because they're very high pitched, and they're still kind of recognisable as an animal in some way, but more like monsters, I guess, because it becomes very low. And strange kinships appear between things. Ornette Coleman's saxophone often sounds like, has the same kind of quality of these birds, birds at 3 RPM, where they sound like, you know, foghorns and hippos, subsonic hippos, whatever. Another thing I find interesting about this is thinking of the record as landscape, because in the sound there's something that's very kind of tectonic, geological, you know, these low grinding sounds, and there's a kind of analogue of that if you think of the stylus in the valley of the groove. If you know, you make yourself very small and put yourself in there, you're like in this valley, and there's this diamond-shaped thing sort of grinding its way round, vibrating. It's you know, this glacial crawl, you know, and then the whole surface of the record, you know, it becomes like a landscape, which is, I mean, if you magnified it, well, it literally is a landscape, but we're hearing it. We're hearing some sonification of that. I'm just saying, okay, let's conduct this experiment into time and technology. So there's, to me, equally as important as the sound that one hears is just this idea that something's being stretched out, something's being, you know, if one has the attention, the desire, the obsession, you could sit here for 6 hours and listen to a whole record, and it would be an amazing experience, because, you know, this classic thing would happen in it, which is it would get really boring. But, you know, like John Cage, who obviously his presence looms large over such proceedings of this festival, you know, there's that famous thing he said, you know, if something's boring for 2 minutes, we'll wait another 2 minutes. If it's boring, and wait another. And that's very true. You know, you can really submerge yourself in what's going on, and it's very nice, this fact that there's the street behind this. So this is going at this ludicrously slow speed, but everyone out there is going at their normal speed, rushing around. Certainly at different times of day they really start rushing around, and the light changes, and, you know, the world goes round, and this record is on a whole different time span, and that sort of stretching and compacting of time, that juxtaposition of different time scales, that's really what it's kind of about.